I know it's a Thursday, but it's still time for Cloud Talk Live. Oh, come on now. All right, everybody. My name is Jeff DeVerter. I'm the Chief Technology Evangelist around these parts here at Rackspace Technology, where I'm standing right here in the middle of our corporate headquarters. We call it the Castle here in San Antonio, Texas. So, everyone, welcome to another episode. And as you know, this isn't just me talking to you. I'd love for you to be a part of this conversation. So, if you'd introduce yourself into the comments down below, well, it'll make it a whole lot easier for me to be able to say, hey, look, it's Sean from San Antonio or wherever Sean might be, or even if it is Sean. So go ahead and introduce yourself. And then once we get Tony up here and you want to comment and join in the conversation, well, you'll be able to do just that. All right. As you know, if you want to get a hold of us, just shoot an email over to solve@rackspace.com. Got to tell you, the inbox has been a little light lately. I'd love for you guys to shoot a note and tell me how you're doing, first of all. And then if there are any topics you'd love for us to cover, you have any feedback for us, well, go ahead and do that. Hey, we've got Alex from London. We've got, LinkedIn user. I can't tell who that is. That's super awesome. We got Professor Carlos. You're about a regular attender as we get around here, Professor. So glad that you are here. Serena from San Antonio. We've got Pakistan, India, Manish from Racker from India. That's super fun. Hyderabad, Harish, we're glad that you're here from Hyderabad. Getting towards the end of y'all's day over there. Well, guys, we have a really fun conversation scheduled for you today. And I brought a new near dear friend from, hey, we got somebody coming down here. You think this is a virtual background? Oh, no, we've got people walking all around. Here comes some noise. But I got a new, just super great friend who's going to be here from Akamai. And we're going to talk all things API, cloud security, web application firewalls. Romania. Hey, I'm glad that you are here. I wish I could pronounce your name and not make a mess of it. So I'm just going to say welcome from Romania. You might be the first Romanian to be here. So thank you. Dallas is here. Another Andrew from San Antonio is here. But with that, why don't we just remind you that what we're doing here is called Cloud Talk Live. And Cloud Talk Live is part of our Solve program. Now, Solve is the thought leadership program here at Rackspace. Now, you go walking on to your rackspace.com and you're going to find eventually someone's going to pop up on there. Hey, how can I help you today? You know what that means? It means, how can I sell to you today? But if you go over to rackspace.com/solve, you will not be sold to. Everything that we have there is free and available. There are articles there. There are our research is there. Our latest research on security can be showing up there in applications. That's coming out soon. We've got that data starting to come back, and the podcast, of course, can be found there, and the audio from these live streams can be found there as well. So I'd encourage you to go spend some time at rackspace.com/solve. And if you're not already subscribed to the podcast, I would love for you to do that. I consider it a personal favor. So thank you. I don't know what that means, but hey, that'd be great. But right now, I want to introduce Tony Laro to you. Tony is the Director of Security and Technology and all kinds of great things over at Akamai. And we were talking about some crazy stats, that amount of traffic that they are pushing these days. But why don't we go ahead and bring Tony up onto the stage and introduce him to the world here. Tony, welcome to Cloud Talk Live.
Good morning, Jeff. How are you?
Fantastic. How are you today?
I'm good. Thank you.
Hey, did you know we're going to talk to the whole world today?
I do. I can see. Look at that from all over the world. That's awesome.
It really is awesome. These interwebs can be used for good sometimes, not just always for evil. So I'm glad that you are here today. Now let's introduce you. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, your role over at Akamai, and then I have a follow-on question of something I found in your LinkedIn profile.
All right. I'm curious. So my role at Akamai is Director of Security Strategy and Technology. So I look after Akamai's kind of go-to-market strategy in terms of how we're developing new security technology. And I interface with our CISO and other business leader community, really to make sure that as we develop new tech, that we are actually meeting the problems that are out there in the real world. So some of the things we do are, forward facing, and we're kind of seeing a problem come, from 5 miles away. And then other times we're having to respond to, hey, there's a little shift here, a little change in how attackers are implementing their strategy. We have to make sure that we continue to update that. So new feature enhancements, things like that. I help kind of make sense of that between the business side and then our product development and leadership side here at Akamai. So
I think
tons
that's
of fun stuff.
yeah, and that type of role is so important because, companies like ours that have been around for a little while inside of tech, as tech shifts, sometimes we need to point our engines and our smart people in mildly different ways. I would imagine there's just a few people out there who still maybe just think of Akamai as, hey, they're the CDN company, right? That's all they do.
Yeah, we get that quite a bit, and for the past probably 10 years or so, we've been trying to change that perception, and really because Akamai has been seeing so much of the world's traffic for so long because
Yeah.
we're hosting all the major websites and web experiences that we all go to. And once you start to realize that we can look at the application security threats, the DDoS risks, all the different things, and kind of mine that for intelligence, we
Yeah.
can now repurpose that intelligence information into security advice and controls to make sure that you're safer online. So that's the goal.
That's incredible that you can use the intel of the types of traffic you're seeing going to the world's largest and most impressive websites to help make them more secure. I love the fact that you guys are doing that. Now, my question for you, as I was poking around inside of your LinkedIn, is part of your bio of who you are, is an artist. What is that all about?
Yeah, so I've been doing art for a long time. We have a weekly meetup with a kind of an artist collective here in Dallas, Texas, on Thursday nights actually, where we meet up and we kind of socialize and we draw, paint, whatever the case is. But I've been doing art ever since I was a little kid. I remember drawing on little. My mom had like recipe cards, like
Yeah.
blank ones, and I would take those out. I don't know why, but I would draw little pictures of Superman's spaceship, and then a little baby popped out. I mean, this is like way back. I was probably 6 years old at the time,
Yeah.
um, but I've been doing art for a very long time, and it's a passion of mine.
Well, I love that, and we do these Women in Tech Tuesdays. We devote the whole month of, I think it was March, to it. And one of the things we uncover is who individuals as they go through their career. And one of the messages, especially as we heard from our last guest, who was Shannon, is that the pivot is a good thing, and all these experiences lend themselves and come together. And one of the things that Shannon had called out was. Was when asked, what people can do to help, make them better in their career and such, especially in the earlier years, is to learn a musical instrument. And the creative arts help so much, I think, and she was espousing this as well, in especially in analytical jobs. It helps you to, it molds your brain to think in very interesting and creative ways. So I love the fact that you're an artist and you put that up there on your technology LinkedIn. But hey, here's a guy who's going to be proud about his art. So I wish we'd pulled up some pictures to show the folks of what you do.
Yes, well, you could probably find my Instagram pretty easily, and I've got some of my work up there. It is pretty bold to put up. I'm an artist,
Yeah.
especially when you're not a professional artist. It just kind of seems like you're playing the role, right? But I think one thing that I love about people in infosec and in security is the fact that they do cybersecurity and they deal with attacks all the time. That's probably the least interesting thing about them.
Yeah.
So many of the people I know, their hobbies and side passions are so diverse and so amazing. It's really great to get to know people that way.
It is. And business used to be much more stuffy, I think, than it is today. And I think maybe if we look for silver linings in how things that came out of COVID is when everybody just became a two-dimensional inside of a box. I know I personally started looking for ways to find other ways to connect with individuals that I was talking with on a day by day basis. So thanks for sharing that with us. But let's jump back into what Akamai is up to, and maybe to help give folks the scale. Now, but before we do that, actually, let's talk about some of the shifts that you are seeing in types of traffic. And first of all, if we think about these, you mentioned it earlier, we live in an app-based world, whether it's something that's running on the phone, whether it is a website. Ultimately, behind the scenes, there's one little acronym that makes all that stuff happen. Correct?
Yeah, the fact that applications are kind of running our life, we've seen a massive increase in the use of APIs, right? So API is the back end kind of communication path for all of these applications and user experiences on the web today. In fact, we've seen recently that 92% of the traffic by hit volume on the Akamai platform is API related traffic.
Yeah.
To me, that's mind blowing. I remember a few years ago, I think it was 83%. But it really, that growth and inflation really has to do a lot with how we consume the web, and the
Mm,
web is consumed through apps, through through kind of these portable devices, etc. And all of that is really driving and changing the way that the kind of the even the attack surface of the web is today.
right. Well, and let's talk scale as well. In fact, you provided an infographic. Let's see if Daniel can bring that up, and you can tell us a little bit about the amount of traffic that, well, you guys are arguably the leader, but let's talk a little bit about what you're saying here.
Yeah, so I thought this was really interesting. We put this together right after we hit this high water mark just before RSA conference this year. And the high water mark was 250 terabits per second. And the team put together an infographic that really kind of shows what this looks like. And it says at 250 terabits per second, you could download every feature length film ever made in 37 seconds.
It's
But if you
incredible.
wanted to watch those, it would take 51 years of nonstop viewing, right? So I was like, okay, let me see how we. Of course, I'm not just going to take an infographic at face value. So it was okay. This is how many feature length films there have been in the history of time, according to IMDb.
Yep.
Uh, the average of those is 4 gigabytes in size, per, and then downloading that, 37 seconds. I mean, that's massive, and that's just one, snapshot of a time period. And
Yeah.
those things happen because Patch Tuesday, game release, all these kind of big media events fall on the same exact time. That's
Yeah.
when we hit those peaks. But we're always riding a very high level of traffic across the platform. So
Well, and now let's steer the conversation around really what we're targeted today around, and that is security. So all of this traffic is flowing. It's not just benign movies that's flowing. You mentioned security, Patch Tuesday. You mentioned game releases, but all of that stuff, whether it's my banking transaction, whether it's my my Facebook post, whether it's anything, I plug these little devices in at any point, and we're vulnerable. We mentioned a few weeks ago on the show that there is no little league in cybersecurity. That from the smallest company to the largest company, we're all vulnerable to a lot of the same stuff. So let's talk about some trends that you're seeing in this space.
yeah, I think another kind of great slogan, I think it kind of fits the bill here, is there's no such thing as peacetime on the internet. If you've ever built a web server and given it a public IP address and then ran to get some coffee and then come back and found that it's already compromised, that's a pretty good example of just how dangerous things are online. And
That's
that's not
right.
really a scare tactic. It's just there's a lot of traffic and crawlers and bots and things that are always looking to compromise systems.
Yeah.
Um, in fact, we've seen that from Q1 2021 to Q1 2022, we saw a 300% increase in web application attacks.
Right.
Um, and truth be told, there's always a bit of an ebb and a flow to this,
Yeah.
but the trend line is always growing, right? So 300% increase. And then there are some other interesting findings. For instance, local file inclusion, which LFI, which is a specific attack type,
Mm.
increased by 400% and just 132% over the previous 6 months. So there is a lot to kind of glean from this. And as we look down deeper into the traffic themselves, what tools are being used, who they're targeting, is this a new attack vector?
Yeah.
We're trying to make sense of that, obviously, and make sure that we're developing technology to be able to defend our customers from these attacks.
Wow. We have these, I call them scary security conversations, and I want to start ripping network cables out. But the reality is, as you mentioned, our worlds are app driven. That is how we go about interfacing with our lives, whether it's banking, whether it's insurance, whether it's ordering a meal, or a car. I just traveled. So all of the above. So how is Akamai helping to secure some of these most the most visible websites in the world, and some that we've probably never seen, but you're utilizing some of the same technologies?
The goal here is we want to sit closer to where the attacks began. Um,
Mm.
and because we've built a CDN platform since 1998 is when the company
Yeah.
was founded, we have hundreds of thousands of points of presence, Akamai Edge servers that are one hop away from a majority of the world's internet users. So we're already in front of, we're in between the user request and the backend web service that would, if not detected, it would hit the backend web service, right? So we're able to kind of see the attack and good user traffic right when it onboards, to that front end web experience, and it's there that we can do a number of detections, right? We can say, is this a normal web request in terms of the HTTP spec, right? So there was a certain attack type years ago, which basically would open up a bunch of HTTP connections, but never finish the handshake. So now your web
Oh.
service is creating this relationship with all these clients,
And
but
memory
never
starts to fill, and yeah.
exactly right. So we validate the HTTP connection. We offload those front end responses. Okay, hey, it's a good request. The majority of the web page that's being requested has already been cached. Let's serve that response very quickly,
Yeah.
right? And on the flip side, if there is something that's malicious, the attacker thinks they're hitting the web service themselves, but
But
none
they're
of
hitting
these
the cache.
exactly. Yeah, they're hitting the Akamai edge. But it's there that we gather this intelligence, and we do it on this distributed basis. So
Yeah.
at no single point is there kind of a bunch of like garden hoses connecting to a big fire hose connecting to a river going right into your data center. We're
Right.
we're breaking that up in the tiny garden hose category, and that's where we're doing the evaluation and inspection. And then all that information is delivered via security intelligence and logs back to your SIM on the back end, right? Um, but that's the goal, really, is to provide this kind of intelligence against even the latest attack types very quickly. So because the platform's distributed,
Yeah.
we have the ability to push rules very quickly, and respond to new threats as they emerge.
Well, and to Megan's question, she asked how to, bootstrap and do this. How do you protect this stuff? Simply plugging into the Akamai CDN and the tools that you've got there sounds like that gives you a pretty fair amount of protection at the get go.
Yeah, just being on the Akamai platform, it because you onboard via DNS, it's a DNS CNAME change, and essentially the first requests that
So,
come to your
so
web
easy
service
onboarding. Let
are
me
going to
just
hit
pause
us
for a
first.
second, folks. Crazy easy onboarding. This isn't coding. This isn't infrastructure. This is one field entry. Well, two. You need two of them.
Yeah, absolutely. There's actually two real key components. One, to onboard to the platform, and then make sure you have all of your sites on the platform. Because what tends to happen is uh, people will put the crown jewels behind Akamai, and they'll say, "Hey, these are the websites I care the most about," and then these are our, maybe brochureware sites, or maybe some affiliate sites that you still host but are kind of rebranded to affiliates, whatever the case is.
Right.
But those exist on the same web server or in the same web environment as
Right.
your crown jewel websites. So not protecting those allows attackers to thus influence your web infrastructure.
Yeah.
So we say, listen, holistic onboarding, get everything on there, logins, APIs, whatever. And then the other key component is well, how can I go around Akamai? And this
Mm.
is a technology that basically says if any request goes directly to your origin environment, it's just going to be dropped. Because if it hasn't already come through Akamai and been pre-screened, pre-inspected, etc., then
Yeah.
it doesn't matter to me because I know that everything I care about is going through this path. So those are kind of the two key components. And then there's
Yeah.
tons of different levels of inspection.
Tons of different levels. And I really like that last part where we're only trusting the traffic coming into our environment from the Akamai network. It's that in a sense, it's a refinement or a take on zero trust. I'm not going to trust anybody except what I know I can trust coming in out of Akamai. Now, of course, then it puts the burden of proof and inspection on you guys, but that's the core of what you do. So it's a good safe bet to make.
Yeah, we've gotten used to it at this point. And yet the zero trust mindset is kind of very similar, right? And that's looking at, hey, what comes into your your corporate environment. So
Hmm.
we have security controls and technology that
Mm.
actually plays in work, for corporate MFA, fish-proof MFA login,
Okay.
for remote application access of your trusted internal apps without ever putting your device, if you're at home, connecting typically through VPN into your corporate environment. Now there's this kind of inherent trust relationship between your home network and that device and then the corporate environment. We kind of break that connectivity and we basically virtualize the application experience. So
Mm.
even right now, when I connect into Akamai, even if I'm in Akamai office, it's just a hotspot, right? It's like being at Starbucks,
Huh.
except the coffee's not as good. But actually, in some cases, it's better. But let's not get into that. But basically, I get onto the Wi-Fi, and then every application I open, even if it's Outlook, I'm not actually putting my device into the network. I'm getting fed that through our reverse proxy,
Right.
platform, and I think that's kind of a real key component as you look, you know, uh, with the fact that I opened with, right, there's no such thing as peacetime on the internet. You
That's right.
can't let your guard down. You can't kind of assume anything, and the attackers take advantage of that kind of status quo, right? If I get onto a device that's in the network, now I have free reign, right? And we can't let that happen. So, we're looking at a whole bunch of different types of traffic types inside the network as well. Recursive DNS inspection, uh, uh, east-west traffic inspection and
Mm.
validation between host servers, etc. I mean, that kind of stuff is really powerful. And again, we want to put your eyeballs on the traffic that matters most. Um, and then the point I mentioned before, if you're looking for the needle in the haystack as an incident responder, we want to remove the hay so that what's coming to you is just needles,
Yeah.
right? And to me that makes sense because I've been in infosec since the late '90s. I've spent years of my life just tracking down something that's, oh, that was a marketing update to a web service and
Right.
not a malicious attack or something, right?
Well, Tony, that was awesome, and I love the fact that we talked about it from the front side on the web side of things, but also on the corporate side. The Akamai's got solutions to help make sure that there's a holistic protection. Love the fact that we talk about that even inside your corporate office, it's a no trust environment, a zero trust environment where that reverse proxy is still looking at everything. Well, Tony, I don't know how it happened, but we're out of time. You're going to have to come back because we didn't get to even half of what we wanted to talk about here today. So hopefully, you can make some time for us in the future.
I will. Thank you, Jeff. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. And Tony, or everybody go find Tony Laurel on Instagram and check out his cool art. So, um, and, uh, and check out those hobbies. Hobbies are important. All right, Tony, have a great day. We're going to press on here. Everyone, check out Akamai. I'm really impressed with what they're up to. They're a great partner of Rackspace's, and they've got a lot to share. So, all right, with that, let's press on. We have, let me click all these buttons. If you have not already figured this out, you can get all sorts of this information over at rackspace.com/solve. So go check that out. You can also subscribe to the podcast. All right, well, that takes us through our cloud discussion. Let's see what's new in the cloud. This is busy season for the cloud, is how I like to refer to it, because what happens is we start getting into some really interesting conferences that start happening. And the first one I want to talk about is what Microsoft is up to over at their Ignite conference. Now, Scott Guthrie was giving his keynote this week, and I thought this was interesting that Microsoft says that even with what's happening from a recession point of view in the US and globally, they are not seeing a slowdown in web. Or in cloud consumption. In fact, as an individual who's worked in this environment since 2008, and there was a interesting economic downturn. And I had intel from working at the company from even back in 2003. Rackspace started in 1998. These types of companies, whether it's a Rackspace or a cloud company, tend to not see downturns in business through economic downturns because we've become a great place to commoditize some of that infrastructure and be more efficient. So interesting that Azure, number two cloud in the world, actually maybe even battling it out for number one at this point, is seeing that as well. Now, also in the news from over at Amazon, I thought this was incredibly interesting. Amazon has plans to equip 29 million people with cloud computing skills. Can you believe that? 29 million people by 2025. Now, that is, if so, first of all, you could look at Amazon and look at where they're making their investment. Yeah, they're in cloud computing, so they invest a lot more in cloud computing. But they're in that business because there is significant demand. In fact, what they see is the largest threat, and you see this across all of the cloud providers, is whether there is enough people to actually operate those solutions, to build those solutions, architect and code those solutions. Because at the end of the day, these cloud providers are making the most incredible box of Lego bricks that then cloud practitioners get to put together in meaningful ways. Somebody's got to put them together, folks. And if you aren't in this business and you're looking for a meaningful career, here's a great way to get trained almost for free. Go check that out. The other thing, if you go look for this article, what you'll find is they even have a very specific program for displaced Ukrainians who have little to no technology experience to get them trained and into a meaningful career. So a lot going on over at the Amazon. Oops, you saw the green screen. All right, let me push that button. All right, so that gets us through our This Week in Cloud. Let's talk cloud releases. And first up will be from Amazon as per normal. Now, AWS Activate is now open to all. Now, what AWS Activate is it is AWS's startup program. It is all kinds of resources for AWS folks to get in, or startups to get in and become successful and useful inside of the AWS ecosystem. Not only in some cases free infrastructure, but patterns for applications, access to information. They say to take somebody from startup to IPO, and I thought that was really interesting. And so that's our new service that's now out of preview and into general availability. So go check out AWS Activate. Also, general availability from Microsoft. Now, there was a plethora of updates and announcements from Microsoft. Of course, this week is their Ignite. They have two big conferences. Inspire is for partners. Ignite is for developers and businesses. So it's kind of like the reInvent. It's Microsoft's reInvent, but lots of announcements going on from them. And Service Bus Explorer is now available in the Azure portal, allows you to get in and inspect and get all kinds of new information about Service Bus. So if you're into the Azure ecosystem, go check out Service Bus Explorer. And also, go look for some press announcements from Microsoft Ignite. They are announcing a ridiculous amount of stuff this week, as we will see when reInvent time comes up for AWS. Now, I bring this one up that autocomplete is now available for retail search. It's now GA inside of Google Cloud Platform, inside of Google Cloud. Now, this I bring up really because I like to call out the fact that the cloud providers are spending a lot of time working on industry clouds. And what autocomplete for retail search does is, or specifically the API around retail search, is it is their machine learning model to help retailers create predictions and recommendations for their customers, for companies that have no idea how to deal with AI and ML, because this is a deep learning model and it's tailored for retail and makes that whole process a super much easier. For instance, they're very public about this, but this is the service that powers Home Depot's retail engine. So if you've ever used that, you know that you have used this service from Google Cloud. So if you're in retail, maybe you want to go have a little look-see at that. All right, that's everything from the cloud releases, or at least the ones I chose to share with you. You can find all this information out over at the Solve website. Well, let's, as I talk about not selling to you, the only thing I do sell is maybe come work with us over here at Rackspace. So let's talk job of the day. And for that, it's a big data engineer. Now, this is a job that is open in our EMEA region. We saw some folks from Europe here in the chat, so maybe this job interests you. So if you're into big data, well, you're going to need to do stuff like building complex ETL, or ELT is a better way to go. First, extract, then load and translate them when you need them. Build complex queries using MongoDB, Oracle, and SQL Server, and MariaDB, not Mariah Carey DB sings you a great song. and all the hard things inside of data. If you're a data engineer, you're in the EMEA region, we'd love for you to come and work for us. Just head on over to rackspace.jobs to find all of these things. All right. Well, folks, we are coming, I think, here to the end of our little program. If you want to learn more about what we're up to, just head over to rackspace.com/solve to learn more. Now, I also I was just in New York talking to some of our customers, and one of my good friends, Keith Lawrence, was there. And Keith works for a company called App Dynamics, who I would say is arguably the leader in full stack observability. Your apps are running in the clouds, and you need a way to be able to track those transactions from the iPhone or Android all the way through to the backend database, in the cloud, out of the cloud, all of the things, and get to mean time to innocence for all those different departments should there be any issues. App Dynamics is absolutely the leader in that space. All right, we skipped Tuesday this week because I was in New York. We're back here on Thursday, but you know what? We're going to be back to see you this coming Tuesday, where our good friend and partner Raj Dada, for a partner over at Oak9, he is the CEO there, is going to come share what they have been up to. Oak9 is an incredibly impressive company, and Raj is even more so. So I'd love for you to come join us Tuesday at 8:30 a.m. Central Time for another great episode of Cloud Talk Live. Ooh, here comes the music. So come join us on Tuesday with our conversation with Raj and all the news that's fit to talk about. We'll see you next week.